Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of LivingYosh. I'm very honored to have a very special guest, someone who has already given me advice about how to move forward with a podcast and to share my story. Gary York is on with us today. Gary is somebody who literally has done it all. He's dealt with anyone and everyone. He's a tough guy. He's written a book. He does a podcast. Everything that I want to do, Gary has done it. Gary, if you don't mind, please tell us a little about yourself. And I'm just going to sit and listen and be in awe.
Well, I want to thank you very much. I'm very honored to be on your show, and I've looked at some of your things, and I think that you are really headed in a great direction and to help people like you and me and other people that need advice on how to get on track in life. So thank you for that.
Thank
I
you.
I don't consider myself a tough guy, but I appreciate that comment. But I do want to tell you that a little bit about me. I started out right after high school, did 10 years in the United States Army with the military police. And after 10 years with the military police, I got out because of small children and the unfortunate thing of divorce. It happens a lot to soldiers and law enforcement, unfortunately. So I didn't want to leave three small children and finish my last 10 years in the military. So I decided to stay with the children and not do my last 10 years in the military. I was a staff sergeant when I got out of the military. I went to look for a temporary job, and I went to a local prison and I said, hey, I need a job to feed my family. And they put me through the process, and I started working as a correctional officer, which, remember now, in my mind, was just going to be temporary. Well, 29 years later, I retired from corrections. And during those 29 years, I got promoted from correctional officer to a felony probation officer, and then promoted within probation to what we call then a house arrest officer. And then I got promoted to something that really changed my life. I got promoted to senior prison inspector, where I conducted criminal, civil, and administrative investigations throughout the Florida corrections. That meant probation and parole, work release, and in the prisons. And those 12 years of conducting investigations was really an eye-opener for me to put me in the realm of everything that happens in corrections. And then I finished my last 12 years because of a great offer, a pay raise. I went to work for the Polk County Sheriff's Office in Florida in the juvenile boot camp, and then later finished as a bailiff in the courthouse. So all those things took me on a big tour of the criminal justice system, learning the entire system, basically. And today I write articles for CorrectionsOne.com. I've worked for them for about 15 years, writing articles on corrections. And I have my own show called True Prison Stories on YouTube by Gary York.
What stuck out the most about being a house arrest officer?
Yes, well, as you know, I started out with a regular probation caseload and then got promoted to house arrest. And that was a big change because we always said, house arrest is like, ooh, it's like one step away, from prison. Now you're on house arrest. If you mess up, your next step is probably prison. And I want to tell you, whether I worked regular probation or house arrest, I had one thought in my mind. I am not put in this position to supervise people on probation to try and put them in prison. I am not in this position because, I wake up in the morning and, man, I just want to violate somebody because that would make me look so good to violate somebody. That was not my thought process. Even as a correction officer, I didn't wake up in the morning saying, let me go. May I say this? That's not me. That's not the way you're supposed to do it. We are here for care, custody, and control and supervision. I always believed, as a probation officer, if my caseload had more people successfully completing their probation or their house arrest, hey, I thought I was a winner too. I must be doing something right. So I would sit people down and say, look, you're on probation. I'm your probation officer. Here's the list of things that you must comply with. I have to have you read this and you must sign it. We must both be on the same sheet of music. But I told them, look, I'm here to tell you what needs to be done and advise you. And if you work with me and we work together, you can successfully complete this probation and get out and not be on probation again, hopefully forever, not go to prison. That's our goal, okay? So let's work together and not against each other. I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to try to violate you. but you got to work with me. You have to do your half, you have to do your share.
I wanted to ask you, when people first met you that were about to be on house arrest, were they like rude to you? Were they nice to you? Were they scared of you? What was someone's first impression of you when they know they're about to be on house arrest?
Well, when they first came in, I believe they were all skeptical. Here's this guy, gonna be my supervisor. In their mind, I think they were thinking, now, how's he gonna be? Is he gonna be a jerk? Is he gonna be fair? That's got to be in their mind. And that's what I could kind of see. You're a little nervous. Now, those that have been down the road before came in cocky. I mean, I have to be honest about it, came in cocky and yeah, I've been on probation before. I already know all this stuff. So then I would have to say, hey, well, let's make it the last time you're on probation, okay? Let's don't do this over and
Yeah.
over and over. Let's work together to get you off probation and not back through this rotating cycle, because you're going from the street to probation to jail to prison and then back again. And I would tell them, let's work on breaking the cycle. And then they would kind of calm. You could see their shoulders drop a little bit, like the defensiveness would go away. They would stop being in the defensive posture and kind of drop their shoulders, say, okay, well, what you got for me? What's your plan? And I'd say, my plan is easy. When something comes up that you need to do, I'm going to tell you. And then if you're having a problem getting that done, we need to figure out how to get it done. Best way for you. Each person was different now. Each person's a different personality. Each person has different problems. If you're a probation officer and you don't listen to each person as a human and hear their personal problem, you're not going to fix much, in my opinion, because these folks are in trouble and they need a little help. So that's what I would try to do. Calm them down and tell them, let's walk this street together and get through this.
I really respect the way that you approach them, because I'm sure you knew over time, and people could only imagine that it's really they're already going through so much. And do you feel like they felt like it was relief just to be home, or sometimes they just felt overwhelmed having somebody always have worried about what they're going to do next? I mean, I'm not saying you hounded them, but in your mind, do you see it as a tough position to be on house arrest, or do you feel like you're going home and everything's fine, and you don't have to worry about anything? And this is like such a difference, because I'm wondering how people felt going home when they have an officer who's basically worried about their every move, compared to when you're in prison, where you basically you kind of sit in the cell and you don't have someone who's talking to you all the time about next. What are you going to do next? I mean, how did you see in their eyes coming from prison to house arrest? Is I guess what I'm getting at.
From prison to house arrest, I knew that they were happy to be home. They would even tell me, I'm just so glad to be home. I'm glad to be back in my house.
But you make one mistake, you're going back. Is
Yeah.
that a little nerve-wracking for these people?
Yes, it's very nerve-wracking. One mistake, like I moved from one location to another and I didn't tell my probation officer. That's a violation. You didn't inform me.
Gary, I
Before
was
you
on edge
moved.
all the time. I was always on edge.
Yeah.
I was always worried if that thing beeped, even if I did nothing wrong. And it's not because the house arrest officer, but you're on edge, and I'm not saying I'd rather be in prison, God forbid, but it's very nerve-wracking.
Would get calls. I just lost my job. Please don't violate me. Please don't violate me. I said, well, hey, you lost your job. Now, we're not going to violate you for that, but now we need to get you another job, because one of the stipulations is
Yeah.
you must have a job. And we would, I would say we have a little time to get your job. We're not going to violate you because you lost your job. But they were panicking because the first thought in their mind was, I lost my job. I'm going back to prison right now, which isn't the case. We do give them time. At least we do in Florida. We give them time to get another job. The temptations are so bad when you're on house arrest. Like, friends and family want you to go somewhere and you say, no, I can't go there. And
Yeah.
if you take the risk to go someplace and get caught, now you're probably going to be violated and go back to prison. It's such a nerve-wracking thing that I can't imagine probably going to sleep at night always worried about, what's going to happen. Is tomorrow going to be a good day or a bad day? So I would try to calm.
So don't you always know where they are? Don't you have a tracker of where they are at all times? They can't just go wherever they want, right?
No, they cannot go wherever they want. They could go to their job and directly back home. They could go to the doctor, to the dentist, directly back home. They could go to the grocery store because they have to buy groceries, right? And directly back home.
Hmm.
That's about it. I mean, your job, your doctor, your dentist, and groceries. That's about it. That's the only time you get to be running around anywhere, and that's for mandatory issues that are necessities of life, and that's it. The rest of the
But you
time,
knew
you
where they were
are
at all times? You were
what?
able to track them? Isn't there like a device that
No, not everybody on house arrest had the monitor on there. Not everybody had the monitor on
God,
there.
I didn't know that.
Not here in Florida. Some would have an ankle monitor and some would not. But we would have to visit them at home 3 times a week. They had to come visit us at the
Wow.
office 2 to 3 times a week. We would have to visit their job site 3 times a week. And we would have to make surprise visits at odd hours. So, as a house arrest officer, you don't work 8 to 5. I might pull up at their house at midnight. Yeah, believe it or not, midnight. And their family, if they live with a family, you're disrupting the whole family. But they have to be, you have to have notation of surprise visits because unfortunately some would think I could sneak out of here at 1 in the morning and get back by 5 a.m. and nobody will know that I'm gone. So those are the ones that
Wait,
I
so
would.
Gary, why not put all of them on the GPS monitor just to make your life easier?
Well, that would make it easier, but Florida law is Florida law, and the judicial system makes a decision. This one will have ankle monitor, this one will not. So not everybody in Florida on house arrest has an ankle monitor, just so you know that.
I didn't know that. I thought house arrest meant monitor. I thought it all went together. Okay.
No, not everybody has a monitor in Florida.
So I want to go back a little bit, Gary. When you said that you went for a job at the prison, like, first of all, how did you find that job? I mean, did you look in the white pages and they said we're looking for people to work in the prisons? How does even somebody get into that?
Well, coming out of the military police, I knew that a lot of military police end up going 2 places. They either go to civilian law enforcement or they go to work at the prison. And there was a prison 5 miles from the house. So that's why I went there. Remember, I thought it'll just be a temporary job. And I went there
Yeah.
and never thinking I would stay. But it's not a job for everybody working in corrections. A lot of people could not do
No.
these jobs. But I started working there and it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me to be around 100 inmates to one. I would work a dorm with 100 inmates, and there's only me and those inmates. And I think maybe the 10 years in the Army made me a little more mature, a little more life learned things, and I I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't have a problem talking to the inmates or being around them.
Now, did your resume help get that job? What kind of like requirements are there to get a job in there?
Okay, that's a good question because each phase had to have a different requirement. Correctional officer had to have a high school diploma, a clean criminal record, and drug free, obviously. And then they did a background check and they would talk to family and neighbors and all that. That was for correctional officer. Probation and parole, you had to have a bachelor's degree, minimum bachelor's degree. And I had a bachelor's
Wow.
degree. I had a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, so that's how I got in probation. When I got promoted to senior prison inspector, I had a master's degree. Now, that wasn't mandatory, but I'm pretty sure that helped a lot. Not only did I have a background with corrections and military, but I had a master's degree. By then, I had my master's degree in criminal justice. Each phase of my Department of Corrections career, I kept my education going because I knew that if I wanted to advance or do something different, I was going to have to at least have those degrees.
Yeah. And you got that in the military? You got it before the military?
I got my bachelor's degree at St. Leo College while I was in the military, and I got my master's.
So, did your experiences early on lead to you writing corruption behind bars, or is that something you were thinking about for many years? What led to the writing of corruption behind bars?
Well, people would say, hey, what kind of investigations do you do in the prison? Obviously, you can't speak of ongoing, but past investigations
Yeah.
I could talk about. Florida has what we call a sunshine law, and that allows people to go and freely get a copy of any investigation they want once it's completed. And I would tell these prison stories, and people would say, God, you should write a book about that. And I thought about it,
For sure.
and then one day I sat down and started writing Corruption Behind Bars. And that was my first book of 3 that are on Amazon right now. And Corruption behind bars, everything in there is true. I investigated everything in that book, and the results, I used the real names of the corrupt as long as it was a newspaper article or a newscast. If it wasn't in a newspaper article or a newscast, I used fictional names. But everything is true in that book and things I investigated.
But Gary, you got to have some people that are not happy with you writing this book.
I had people say, I had a lot of officers that are still friends with me today that I worked with say, Gary, wow, you better watch your back. I mean, you just told it like it
I was going to
is.
say,
You're not hiding anything. There's one case in there where we indicted, unfortunately, 10 correctional officers for beating an inmate every day for 5 days, and he finally died. And I got the investigation, and we indicted them, and I wrote that story in the book. Well, I was already being threatened by them when I was doing the investigation. I hate to say it. Let me put the one thing, though. There are a lot of honest, hard-working correctional officers out there. I'm talking about the bad apples.
I agree with you.
So I don't want people to watch this and say, oh, no, they're not all bad. I'm just telling you about the small percentage of bad ones. But when they go bad, they really go bad. And I think it's worse to get threatened by correctional officers than it is to be threatened by an inmate. I really didn't get
So,
threatened
Gary,
that
can
much
I
by
ask
the
you
inmate.
something? So I've seen these shows where they take random people. I mean, you don't know if these reality shows how real they are, but they take random people. They basically turn them into correction officers or prison guards for like a week or two, and eventually the power gets the best of them. I'm wondering, especially working in the prison, you have to be pretty strong-minded because the temptation, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, to use your power like I'm in charge and you can't do anything about it must be very hard sometimes for these people. And I guess, it doesn't mean they should be having corruption behind bars, but the power people have sometimes can be dangerous.
Always told new officers, do not let that shield make you think you're powerful, or over powerful. Never use your position for personal gain. Don't use your badge to have sexual relations with a female inmate or vice versa. Don't use your badge to make money smuggling in drugs or weapons, because then you've crossed the line. And in my book, I have my quote that kind of stuck with me and people know about it. An honest officer has integrity. A corrupt officer has a price. And I wrote that out one day to put it in the book. And now it's kind of like people who know me know that quote. An honest officer has integrity. A corrupt officer has a price.
I
Don't
love
become
that.
that corrupt officer, because you're tainting the shield of the honest, hardworking officer.
I don't know if you could share this, Gary, but have you ever had to approach an officer and just get in their face and be like, what are you doing? Like, you can't do this? You ever have
Yes.
to like step up to someone?
Yes, we train. I still train today because I go around the country doing training on ethics, and I train on ethics, I train on corruption, and I train on inmate manipulation. Trying to get all the young officers to understand that you can't fall into this trap. You'll never get out once you do one time or bring one thing in and that you shouldn't. Now you've crossed the line. You can't go back. If you get caught, that's the end of it for you. So I tell officers, when you see an officer that has the perception of being too friendly, now, I'm not saying you can't talk to inmates. You can. But what do you talk to them about? The
Yeah.
weather's good today. You could talk a sport every now and then, what's happening in sports. You can ask them how they're feeling. Nothing wrong with that. That's humanism. We need some of that in corrections. What I'm talking about is an officer sees another officer spending hours talking to an inmate in the cell with an inmate sitting on their bunk. I say to approach that officer and tell them, you may not be doing something wrong with that inmate, but the perception you're giving is bad. Try to save those officers from falling in and going over the line.
How does this corruption stop? Does it ever stop? I mean, is it avoidable?
I just did 3 videos on my podcast. I did a series of 3 corruption videos. They're my last 3 videos, by the way. One was, will corruption ever stop in corrections? The answer is no. We can slow it down and we can do things to make it harder for corruption to happen, but we're not ever going to stop at 100%. It's the nature of the beast. The other videos I did on corruption were what's the worst thing that can happen when an officer turns corrupt? And that's death. Some corrupt federal officers were being arrested at the Tallahassee federal prison. They had agents go out to issue the arrest warrants at the prison on these 6 officers, and one of the officers smuggled a gun into the prison, and when the warrant was
Gosh.
being served, he shot and killed the federal agent. That is what corruption leads to. Corruption leads to death, and I try to tell everybody that.
And what about corruption as far as house arrest or probation officers? I mean, what's the difference as far as that type of corruption?
Well, very good question, because remember I said as an inspector, we did probation and parole investigations as well. Now, I actually worked in an office when I was a regular probation officer. We had a house arrest officer. He survived. He begged the court not to put her in prison. I'm not kidding you when I say she got 20 years house arrest. The judge probably thought she'll
What?
never make 20 years on house arrest. Well, she didn't, but either did the probation officer make it, because it was determined that something funny was going on between the two. Yes, just as in prison, sometimes a probation officer will cross the line and have a relationship, an unprofessional relationship with an offender. That's one example. Another example is money, 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 the root of all evil.
Yep.
We've had people on probation take money bribe to warn gang members when they are having warrants served on them. Hey, they've got 4 warrants out for you, John, Joe, and Jill. Get out of there. And when those probation officers are caught doing that type of thing, obviously they end up in prison for doing that. So I'm glad you asked me about probation and parole, because it's an extension of the prison, right? I mean, it's part of the Department of Corrections. Those things happen in probation and parole just like they happen to officers inside the prison.
Is it one strike and you're out, or you get a chance to be an officer again? Let's say you do something little, and I don't even know how you define little, but are there certain things that happen where you get another chance? And do you think people, if they get a second chance, will be better?
That's a great question, because here in Florida, these investigations, when an officer is investigated, it has to be sent to Tallahassee, Florida, the Florida Department of Correction disciplinary section. They will review the investigation. And for the things I've described here today, they will pull their certification for life. They will never be a correctional officer again or a probation officer again. And not only pull their certification, but, like I said before, they could end up in jail, prison, or probation themselves. Now, there are some minor infractions that we call administrative infractions that these officers can be suspended for 10 days without pay, but they get to stay on the job, things like that.
What's the example? What's the example of something that will be a 10-day suspension?
Okay.
What did they do?
When they tell their supervisor that they did their job, and the supervisor goes and finds out that they lied. They lied and they did not do their job, and it was not documented. That's an administrative investigation, and they could get fired depending on their history, the history of the officer. But if the officer has a good, clean history, they could get suspended for 10 days. If the officer fails to report something that they need to report. I saw this happen. Well, why didn't you report it? You should have reported that. You have a badge. You're an officer of the law. They might be able to keep their job for that, just get suspended without pay. Arguing with another officer, calling another officer, slandering another officer. Sometimes we have to investigate sexual harassment among the staff. Sometimes they can stay. Sometimes they can't, depending on how bad the sexual harassment was against the other staff member. Those are a few things that fall under administrative.
Gary, let me ask you, what made you want to do this? What made you want to, start the book? Are you possibly doing this also for the prisoners and the people who have families and the people that are being wrongfully treated? I mean, I'm sure they're very thankful, because even if you're helping one case not happen, it could possibly be saving someone's life in many ways. But I'm sure you're possibly doing this because you've lived it. You've seen the worst happen, and you're helping people.
I have had a lot of honest officers thank me for writing that book. Believe it or not, a lot of people wouldn't believe that. That is the truth. And they tell me that somebody needed to tell the truth. I have had inmates' families tell me, thank you for writing that book. We never knew of anybody, an officer that worked in the system, that would write something to expose this. I have had inmates thank me. I'm not ashamed of any of those groups thanking. Okay, I appreciate all of them thanking me, because we're here to serve and protect, right? Well, if I'm here to serve and protect, I need to protect the incarcerated folk. I need to protect the civilian staff, the uniform staff, and I need to protect the moms, dads, brothers, sisters, uncles, and aunts of all these inmates to help them know that we're trying to make it a safer environment for everyone, not one side.
I'm thankful because my platform is about, helping people who, have gone through a lot, and it gives them a chance to be strong all over again. You're giving people a chance to know that there is hope, for them and many others. So if not anyone else, I appreciate it because I've been through it. And when I see someone's giving somebody an opportunity to be strong again, I'm I thank you. So thank you so much.
And I thank you for what you're doing because I'm not saying this is an old cliche. I have friends who were inmates. People go, that sounds kind of weird, but I do. I have a lot of friends
That's
who have
okay.
been either in jail or prison before. They're out now. They're great citizens in this country. They're good people. They would help me in a New York minute if I asked for help. Hey, it's okay, folks, to have successful people. If you were on probation before, if you were in prison or jail before, that doesn't mean X you out and you're done. We don't want you anymore and we don't want to talk to you. No, some of them have become more productive citizens than some of the people that have never been to prison before.
I love how you say that. I really do. So why do you think some people who end up in prison or on probation, house arrest, they just fall apart, but they feel like they're worthless and there's never hope to be something again? I mean, I'm sure you've seen that. I mean, it does. It could mentally destroy you.
Well, because they don't have enough support at home when they get out, and then they go try to get a job, and they go, no, you were a felon, you're a felon, you can't get a job. We are getting more and more programs out there to help the people being released from these prisons and coming off probation to help them lead them in the right direction. We have a lot of ministries out there that are going to prison. And even when I was a probation officer, once a week, there was a ministry that came to the office, and anybody that was on probation could come in and listen to the service and talk about their problems. Well, that's what we need. We need more of that stuff. And, the opportunity and the chance to succeed, we have to dangle that out in front of them and give them that chance to make it. Will everyone that comes out of prison or probation make it? The hard truth, folks, is no, they won't. Because we can help as much as we can, but you yourself as a person have to have it in here. I want to get better. I want to do good, and I want to get out of this cycle of hell. I don't know how else to put it.
No, no, it can't be said any differently, to be honest. I love what you said because there always is hope. It limits your opportunities. It limits your chance of a second chance. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be punished for something that you've done. Sometimes you're punished even if you didn't do anything. But do you think, the idea of being a felon, maybe they have to switch that up a little bit because it's hard to get a second chance when you're so limited. Certain things you can't do that makes you feel like you're part of society again.
Well, I'm going to tell you something that's going to shock you.
Okay.
And I hate it. When I heard this, I was sick to my stomach. I have heard a correctional officer say the only good inmate is a dead inmate. And I just lost it. I thought, how can you wear a badge and be fair to the inmate population when your mindset is the only inmate is a good inmate? This type of thought pattern is what hurt some of the felons when they come out on the street trying to do better and become good citizens.
There's no reason people can't have a second chance. It doesn't make sense. And they're working so hard to get that second chance. It's very sad that you're limiting somebody who already has been through the prison system, been through probation, been through house arrest, where if they didn't learn their lesson, there's no hope anyway. But if they did, they should be able to start over again. They already got punished enough.
Exactly. Everybody deserves a second chance. And I'll go one step further. If you slip and fall on the second try, when they come back, let them have a third chance. Because I think at any time in their life, they need that chance to change and get better. And they can't do it alone. We have to help.
You have some very valid points. I mean, you might get a few votes.
I've thought about things not that high, but I've thought about some things before. But I thought, I don't know, maybe I could just go around and try to teach classes to our correctional officers. I've been from California to New York. I was at Rikers Island for 3 days in New York. If I could just teach our young upcoming officers these things that I would like them to know, I think I'm better off doing that than preaching to the civilians. Not that they need to know too.
I
So
agree with you. I think that they need to be re-educated and realize that everybody's a person.
yeah. So where does it start? It starts with who do they have to look up to? They have the only people in there is correctional officers and them. So if we don't set a positive example, then we're just feeding them their evil again by bringing them the bad thing. We're not doing them any good. We have to stop that. We have to set the example so that when they step out of there or step out of probation, they'll remember and hopefully learn something.
And also desperation, especially when you have a family, doesn't make anyone do anything good when you're desperate.
No,
You find ways to do something that you're not supposed to do because you have no choice and you'll do anything for your family. So limitation causes desperation, and desperation causes most likely nothing good.
no, desperation is not a good thing. I have had people get off my probation and parole, and people get off my house arrest, come back to the office on the last day, to sign that paper you're off of probation and bring me a gift. Well, we're not allowed to accept gifts here in Florida, but I would look at the gift and I would thank them so much. And I say, look, I can't accept this. You have to understand, I would love to have this gift, but I can't accept it, but it's a rule. But I really appreciate what you did. When they did that, that made me feel good because they're
Of
trying to
course.
give me a gift. I'm their probation officer.
Wait, but what if they sign the paper and then you're no longer their probation officer and then they give you the gift?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just, we're not
Just
allowed
sign
to.
here first, then I'll take the gift.
Yeah. And when I was a juvenile drill instructor, we had juveniles go through this year-long program. It's a boot camp, basically, like the military. And I was in the military. 5:30 a.m. I'm out there running with them, and we're all running with them. And then during the day, we're marching them to math class, we're marching them to science class, and getting them their GED, high school diploma. And then we have a fish hatchery and a horticulture department to teach them those skills. And the ones who successfully made it, we've had them come back and get out of the car, and they say, "Look, this is my wife. This is my baby. By the way, I'm taking some college classes now." Coming back to us who were their drill instructors, putting them through heck and thanking us for what we did. Why am I telling you these last two stories about the gifts and these juveniles successfully making it? Because that tells me everybody has something good in their heart. They can make it. They
Yeah.
can do it. They can do it.
If you could change one thing about the criminal justice system, I already gave you my answer about the whole convicted felon thing. Maybe there needs to be a few changes with it. What would you change? If you could sign that paper tomorrow and say, I, as Gary, I'm passing a new rule for the criminal justice system tomorrow, what would it be?
I would say that we have too many people in prison for crime that we could just have put them on a program. So I would want to sign something in the law that says, hey, every time we catch somebody doing something wrong, that crime may not necessarily warrant jail or felony probation or prison. Let's use program. I understand if a person goes to the program and doesn't successfully complete it and then gets caught again, well, maybe we have to progress up. But why are many states so quick to arrest and prison, arrest and jail?
Yeah.
Let's have a set of standards for these type of crime where we're going to put you in a drug rehabilitative center first. We're going to put you in this program first. That juvenile program I was telling you about, the judge said, do you want to go to jail, prison, or do you want to go to this juvenile boot camp for a year? Those that chose the boot camp and made it, they're clean. They get a fresh start. So I would like to have a fresh start program where everybody does not go to prison or felony
Love
probation
that.
immediately.
That's great. That's awesome. I'm ready to have him sign that. It feels like the right thing to do. You don't always just take the easy way of, like you said, just arrest them, throw them away because it's the easiest way to do it. Give them a chance. Crime is a crime, but it's not something that warrants, ruining their life.
Right. And all we hear is overcrowding in prison, staff shortages for the
Yeah,
officers. Well, hey, that probably would help ease up some of the overcrowding and staff shorting. Staff,
it sounds simple enough for me
not enough politicians are taking an interest in it, and they should.
because they think, why change what's not broken? It's such an easy thing. I don't have to worry about it. You just handcuff them and you put them away. So why would they focus on it if it has no effect on them in any way?
Exactly.
I want to focus on the new stadium. I want to focus on, a statue of me. It doesn't come up in conversation. So you have to be a voice like you are now because your voice is very strong, Gary. Maybe I'm a little biased because I went through it, but I think it's so awesome that you believe in people really getting a second chance and not having their life ruined over a mistake.
Well, I'm not. I don't want to go to Hollywood, but you have a lot of Hollywood actors, without naming names, that spent time in prison. Look, they got out of prison and became successful actors. I know a lot of people say Hollywood shouldn't be involved in politics, but I'm not using them for politics. I'm using them as another example of people who got out of prison. I'm talking about some people that were in prison 10 years or more, got out, and they were addicted to drugs. They were selling drugs. They were running drugs, and they turned into good citizens, productive citizens.
Because there's always hope.
Yeah.
Why can't they? Especially, sorry to say, but these people that go through the prison system and even house arrest probation, they're probably some of the strongest people you're going to meet, especially mentally. Because if you could handle that, you could really handle almost anything.
And take that energy it took to get through that and channel it in a different direction, and you're going to go far.
Okay, so now I know the history and about you as far as the good you've done for people. What about the good you do for yourself? What does Gary do for fun? What is your hobby when you're not helping other people with your message?
Okay, my wife and I have 5 grown children. The youngest is 31 years old, and the oldest is 44. And none of them followed our footsteps because my wife retired from corrections also 35 years. So my wife and
Wow.
I are retired corrections. We have one that is an electrician, one is an iron worker, one runs his own contracting business doing drywall and anything you can think of. One daughter's a school teacher, and the other daughter has her own salon, where they do hair, nails, and everything. And I'm not unhappy that they went that route because it's not a pretty job. It's a necessary job, and we need good people to do it. But so that's what they do. And then we have 8 grandchildren.
Wow.
So time is
Thank
spent with
God.
them. We have a small farm, 18 acres, with
Oh my God,
some cattle.
small?
Yeah, right out my window here. If I open it, there's cattle. Our cattle are right outside.
My God, that's my dream. I used to have horses when I was in San Diego. That's my dream to live like that.
Yeah. So that keeps it very busy, keeping this 18 acres under control with the cattle and all that. We like to travel. We just got back from Utah and Wyoming, Yellowstone Park, Zion National Park, Park City. We love to travel and see the country because it's funny. Us being retired correctional officers, we've been in tight spaces for many years, either
Yeah.
in the probation officers or in the jail or prison. We want to get out in the country. We want to see the nature now, the things that we didn't see during our career so much. Now we're free. I guess it's a funny word to say, but we're free to see the open country.
Are you a football fan?
Yeah.
What team?
Well, okay, everybody. Now don't turn the channel off when I tell you my team. I was born in El Paso, Texas, and grew up in New Mexico. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. Sorry.
I was a huge Troy Aikman fan growing up. I love the Cowboys. I used to go to Arizona to see Emmitt Smith, Deion Sanders. They're all the same team.
Oh
So
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel you. I loved Troy Aikman. I was a
yeah.
huge fan.
Yep. So that's my team. It's been a long 27, 28 years. I'm still waiting for them to hopefully get back.
There's not that many haters of the Cowboys anymore because they're not winning every year. So you don't have
I
to worry
know they
about
haven't
it.
won for 28 years.
Yeah, they got to make a few changes. I think they're too offensive minded and like they're just getting destroyed on defense. That's just my take. But
No,
I
they
don't think
let
you
the
have to worry
defense.
because
They let the defense go. Yeah.
yeah, they let the defense go. I could talk for hours with you. I mean, seriously, you connect to me, and unfortunately, some of the bad ways in my life, but your message and your strength is going to help so many. I'm sure it already has. So to me, that's amazing. What is next for you, Gary? You've done so much. I mean, I look up to you in so many ways,
Well,
especially your 18 acres.
what is next? I'm glad you mentioned. After publishing 3 self-published books, a traditional publisher has finally picked me up and taken over the reins and told me, you write the story and we'll do everything else. It should be out anytime this year. They've been working on it for the
Oh my
past
God, that's amazing.
2.5 years. It's called The Tainted Shield. And I did a little different in this. I
Okay.
I not only told about the stressor and stress that correctional officers go through, I wrote about the stress that inmates go through while they're serving time in prison.
Wow.
I did a half and half book. You'll notice most books are either all about inmates, all about officers. I did a book that's about both to give because both sides are stressed.
Are
Yeah.
we allowed to get a
Well,
sneak preview of the book?
for introduction chapter, here are the things inmates go through and the stress they go through. And, like coming to the prison off the street, never being in prison before, scared. No matter how tough they think they are, they're in their mind, they're like, what am I going to face?
I wasn't tough.
What's going to happen to me? Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to fit in? Am I going to survive? And then for the officer being understaffed, work mandatory overtime, very few days off, and I try to explain what all of them are going through and explain, like when I went to the women's prison in California and talked to the female inmates, one day I talked to the female inmates, one day I talked to the officer. And I explained to the female inmates the stress that the officers go through. And then I explained to the officers the stress the inmates go through. The female officers looked at me and said, we have never thought about any stress that the officer goes through. To us, we didn't even realize they go through that. And then the officer trying to get each side to understand the other so that maybe when you make decisions, you'll understand, you won't do something. Like an inmate who wants to cause trouble just to make havoc, for the fun of it. Maybe they won't do that if I explain the stress the officers go through. Or the officers, don't be a RoboCop. Don't always be pounding and hounding on. They got stress too. Trying to make both sides understand each other. I thought that might be a good way to help.
I think you should rewrite the ethics book, kind of like, every few years they rewrote the book for sex ed for like high schools and stuff. I think it needs an update. I think it needs to go with the times. I'm being serious. It should be part of their criteria is to read your book. So there's a way to make that happen. I mean, I know you already have a lot on your plate and you've done it all and everything now is just a bonus if you do it. But if you could rewrite that ethics book thing.
Well, I'm excited for this book to come out. Let me see how
Me too.
the welcome comes on this one. And there might be one more book left in me, sort of a educational, like college textbook type, like you said, with ethics and training.
Can I be the first one that interviews you when the book comes out?
Yeah,
even if you tell me yes now,
you got it. You're the first.
I am very biased about the system. I love people that are passionate about what they do and they use their strength and their abilities to help other people. And you definitely define that. I mean, what you do is you're educated, you're a caring person, you're using that to help other people. And I'm so appreciative that you came on the show today. I hope to have you again because I could talk to you for hours already because people have to go out and hear these stories. I mean, they're amazing.
The books that are available now are on Amazon, Corruption Behind Bars, Inside the Inner Circle, and Correctional Officer USA, The Toughest Job. That's the 3 that are out now. The Tainted Shield is the one coming out. My YouTube is True Prison Stories by Gary York on YouTube. I have a little sign at the bottom that says both sides of the bar, trying to send the message that my YouTube's not about just one thing. It's about everybody, both sides of the bar. And I would like to send a message to everybody. I see a lot of hate, correctional officer hating, making bad remarks about inmates or offenders on probation. Inmates and inmates' families saying terrible things about officers. If we're going to fix this system, we have to stop that. I understand there's some bad apples on both sides of the bar. We can't help that, but we can help by getting rid of the bad apple and try to work together. Because as with everything in life, if we don't try to work together, if we don't try to understand each other, we're just not going to make it any better.
I'm into that. And Gary, we started this interview and you told me you weren't tough, but in my book, you define someone tough who's someone who's passionate and they're willing, because some people aren't willing to go out and share their message, and you do that. So in my book, you're one of the toughest people I know. And I thank you again so much for being on LivingYosh today. And once again, I hope everyone purchases your books, listens to your YouTube channel, and then comes back when Gary's on my show again and listens about more stories and his new book to come. Gary, happy 4th of July. Go enjoy your huge freedom land. And thank you again for coming. Once again, LivingYosh. I hope to have more guests with amazing stories like Gary. Thank you again, Gary, for being here.
Happy 4th of July to you as well. And you are a strong person that made it. And you have nothing but great things in the future. I can see it and I can tell it just talking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot. It means so much. Thank you, Gary.
Take care. Thanks for having me.